This is Life Lessons Lounge, and I'm Igina Gerazi. Here, we explore diverse life stories and the wisdom they hold. Let's delve into the stories that shape us, teach us, and connect us all.
And I'm so grateful that you're here, honestly.
Oh,
And also
thank you.
that you give me and all the watchers and listeners the permission to hear your story because I think it's very special.
Mm,
It's very special also when it comes to mother daughter relationship and how that shapes us all in a way. And you have a very special story because your mother is a narcissist,
yeah.
right? I wanted to hear you sharing a little bit of the story. How did you know that she's a narcissist? When did you first realize it?
Took me a really long time. I think I was 45, so that's now 7 years ago, when I really realized that she was a narcissist. I always had a different picture in my mind of what a narcissist was. You have that idea of that they're like grandiose and they always brag about themselves, and she was not like that. She was what I now know, is the vulnerable narcissist that kind of gets their attention through pity and through empathy, like feeling for them because they're suffering so much. And so when I was 21, I realized for the first time probably that something was different with my mom. And I tried to figure out what it was that she was struggling with. And I went through different diagnoses. Could it be bipolar? Could it be depression? And then what I landed on was borderline personality disorder. So I believed for many, many, many years, 15 years, that she was struggling with borderline personality disorder. And yeah, took me until I was 45 that a friend of mine said, "Hey, look at this. Why don't you look at this? This could be your mom." And I thought, I don't think so. Yeah, but I'll read it. And then when I read the description about narcissism, something clicked and I was going like, "Oh my God. Oh wow, this fills in all the little bits and pieces that never quite fit with the borderline personality disorder." And that's when I started studying it for 4 years. Relentlessly, I started studying, what that actually is, narcissism.
Hmm. And what
Mhm.
did you discover? I know
Oh
it's a
my
big
God.
question.
Yes, what did I discover? Well, I I discovered, what narcissism is or how narcissistic people act. I discovered how it affects, children of narcissistic mothers specifically. I discovered how it affects how it affects their relationships with others and how it affected my relationship with my mom. And I also learned, after a long time, why they are the way they are and why they behave the way they are, because that was always the one thing that I couldn't quite understand, right? Even though I
Hmm.
was starting to learn about narcissism, I I still had that question, but why? Why would anyone choose to act like this? Why would anyone choose to deliberately hurt someone else? Why would my mom choose to say hurtful things? So that took me, a little longer because that's a little harder to find in the books and on the internet. Why? And so
Hmm.
I think for me, that's when the last piece of the puzzle fell into place. When I finally understood why, why she is like this, why she's choosing to behave the way she does.
Do you mind sharing that why?
Yeah, no, not at all. Um, so what I understood is that narcissists, suffer on the inside from a lot of insecurity and shame, and actually have an incredibly low self-esteem, which you wouldn't really, think, seeing how they behave, and that they have such a hard time facing those feelings that they create a second persona, a mask that masks all those feelings. They don't want to feel them, but they want to feel in control and like they're important. And so they build up that persona, that mask. And in order to keep that mask in the forefront of their experience, They need energy. They need what is called fuel to keep that up. And so fuel is the only thing they long for in their life. That's the only thing they strive for, because as long as the fuel gets less and less and less, they get closer to these feelings of shame and self-loathing. And so in order to not feel that, in order to be powerful, they need reactions from other people, emotional reactions from other people. And since that is the only thing they care about and the only thing they see, that's what they do. They try to provoke emotional reactions from other people. On top of that, they don't see other human beings as human beings who have feelings. They see them as tools and appliances, like we would see a toaster, or how we see a fridge or a stove. It's an appliance that doesn't get hurt, or we don't care if it gets hurt, because really they're just tools. We don't care about tools. And so that explained to me how my mom could be the way she is, or our other narcissists as well. They literally see us as a tool, like a robot, not a human being with feelings.
I'm really curious about what kind of behaviors did she have,
Mm-hmm.
especially when growing up and probably also now, that reinforces these narcissistic traits or
What I remember the most when I was little is that as soon as I would meet my mom, as soon as I would come home from school, or she would come home from wherever she was, I would check in with her on an emotional level. I would develop these super antennas of sensing, which space of mind she was in. Because if she was in a good mood, which I now know, if she was really well fueled, she could be fun. She could allow me to be who I was. She could be, you know, gregarious and quite full and loud and wonderful. And then I could feel like, okay, I'm allowed to be who I am. I can now, I can go play. I can make a joke. I don't have to pay extra attention to her. But when she was what I now know as, low on fuel, she'd come into the door and I would go, oh, because I knew she was looking for something. I didn't know it at the time. Now I know she was waiting for an emotional reaction. So either she would need attention from me to make her feel better, or she would ask a certain question that was a provocation, or that was designed that no matter how I would answer that question, she could get upset. Mm-hmm. So, there was that fear in me all the time to be able to meet those expectations. So my my whole attention was towards her, engaging where she was. And even if she was in a good mood, it could change after a minute. For example, if, all of a sudden she didn't get the attention that she wanted from me, it could flip. So I had to check in with her again and again and again. I had to see where she was. I had to be aware of where she was. Kind of like a lion that you are in the same cage with, Is the kitty laying down and she's going to rest and she's fine, or is she coming towards you to, claw or bite you? And so, her behavior was also one of entitlement. She felt entitled to special behavior. Both, people on the outside and in the world, like doctors, had to treat her as special. And when she wanted an appointment, it had to happen. She would get very upset if she didn't get it. And with my dad and myself as well, like her word stood above everyone else's. We had to agree with her. Disagreement was not a possibility. We had to appease her. We were tiptoeing around her because she could explode any minute. And so she was very good at picking fights. She could make anything into a fight, and I would know when she asked a question that, no matter how I answered this question, I was lost already. So there was a lot of provocation and demanding of special behavior.
wow. From what I understand, it's she had almost the same behavior towards other people as well, or was she a little bit more guarded towards others?
Yes. So that's the thing about narcissists, that usually people on the outside don't notice anything, because they can be very charming. They can be very generous. They can, they show their best side on the outside. And the terrible stuff only happens inside the house, usually. My mother, though, wasn't quite wasn't very good at hiding it. So many people picked up on it. Like, I know that some of our family members picked up on it because she had that, sense of entitlement that she would insist on no matter what. So they could pick up on that, but they never really saw the abuse that happened inside the house. And my mom is not the charming type. So she wasn't able to charm people in the same way. So the way that she chose to get people onto her side was through gifts. She would spend a hell of a lot of money, on gifts for other people when we visited them, so that, that now they owed her something. And she could be seen as the generous type. But she was difficult in conversations. So anyone who had a longer conversation with her could pick up on, was like, whoa, this is very strange.
Hmm. Very interesting. And how has it impacted your personal development?
Oh boy. Well, as a child, as a child, I learned to tune into other people
Hmm.
so much. And I learned that I was only worthy of their attention and love if I pleased them. And so those two things combined made me into a chameleon, for those people who I really valued their opinion. And so when I was 21, it became really, really apparent for me, when I was interested in other men and developing friendships in a different way, that I didn't know how to behave, or that I didn't know how to behave like me. I could now see the difference for the first time between other people and myself. I could see other people say things and do things that I went like, oh my God, why would they say this? Like, isn't that going to make the other person think like they're like this and that? And so I realized that I tuned into other people and I sensed what do they want me to say? How do they want me to behave? And if I
Hmm.
couldn't quite figure it out, it was incredibly stressful and I would freeze because I just didn't know what to say or do to gain their approval. When I could sense what they wanted, then I just kind of put on that persona and I would be that person. But I also realized that there was that rift between how I really felt on the inside and who I presented, to be. And that became quite painful at that age of 21. It became a really big conflict because now I actually wanted to be loved. And the
Hmm.
only way that I knew to be loved was to be someone else. So I never really felt love for me. I felt love for that persona, for that mask, but I never felt love for who I was. And I felt that if someone would only see inside of me, they would turn around and run away. They would abandon me because I was so insecure and I was so not this and so not that and too much of this, that I really thought they would not like who I was. And so that became a huge challenge, for many years. So that was the impact then. And, of course, as this is now 20 years back, 26 years ago, I have worked so hard on myself and finding out who I was, finding that sense of self, finding the courage to be who I am without being the chameleon. And so I think it has impacted me in the sense that I have, what people go through naturally when they're young and they go through puberty and they become an adult. I had to start that when I was 21 and I worked my way in a, it was really hard work to get to be me, where it seems or seemed so easy for other people.
Hmm.
Mm.
And how has healing looked like for you? Because I
Mm.
can see you have been on that path for 26 years now. And I assume, yeah, that's a lot of work. So where did you start? How did you realize as well for yourself?
Yeah. Well, I I had a coach. Thank goodness I found a coach. slash psychologist who was also trained as a shaman. So he combined both his studies of psychology with shamanism into, the way he worked, which was really wonderful for me. So I started working with him. And what I think healing with him for me was like finally there was a person for the first time in my life who had no expectations on how I was supposed to be, and who embraced everything I said and shared with such love and understanding that I could start to feel like, oh my God, here might be a person who I could open up to and who would show me unconditional positive regard no matter what.
How
That was,
lovely.
yeah, that was the start of the journey for me to actually even experience and get to know myself. Because before that was really scary because I felt so, I had no self-esteem. So all those feelings I had a really hard time facing. But with this man, that became easier and easier. And so after a while, I became really curious about myself because he was so curious about me. And so that allowed me to start digging a little deeper. And then he had a way of taking me, and you know that as a coach, with the same program that we went through, that there's a way of tapping into the body and into the unconscious where things start to come up. And so memories started to show up about my childhood, about my mother, which I had no memory of before at all, that allowed me to see is like, oh wow, this I did not have a normal childhood. And I started to understand why I was struggling the way I was struggling, which then gave me great empathy for myself. So now I had my coach or my psychologist have great empathy for me, and I started to develop empathy for myself. Well, and that changed everything, right? Now I had some self love and some self appreciation and some understanding. And that was a big part of the healing right there. And from there, I could feel myself change and expand. And I fell in love with that newfound freedom. It felt like, oh, I could finally breathe. Whereas before I was stuck in this tiny little box trying to behave a certain way. Now I had the freedom to explore and enjoy what I found inside myself. And that, I think, is probably why I still love to do healing work to this day. Because every time I do deep work, there is a new part inside of me that opens up and starts to breathe and expand. And that is intoxicating, that expansion feels better than anything. I know, way better than pleasing anyone, So it's become my mission in my life, I think, to just keep expanding until the end of my days.
Oh, that's so beautiful. That's really lovely. There's so many things I want to ask you. And one in this moment, it's also about self love. Like, how do you show yourself self love now? What does
Oh,
it mean to you?
such a different way. I used to think that it means taking baths and going for walks. And while those are all really great, I had a spiritual experience now about 6 years ago, 5, 6 years ago, where I experienced it was kind of like a vision and an experience I went through at the same time. And I made it into an exercise for people. And if they would like that, I have an audio that we could, that I could send out. If we could attach the link underneath for your listeners, if they would like to have that meditation, they can have it. So the way that I show self love to myself is that I will give unconditional love to every thought and every feeling that I have.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And that doesn't matter if it's, the hard ones like anger, or if it's, longings, joy, dreams. So yes, I go through a process where, do you want me to explain it?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. So I go through a process of where I tap in with the feeling that I have. Let's say I feel jealous, and I tap in with the feeling. I feel where it is in my body, and I connect with that part of me that feels jealous. I see them as parts of me, like little bits and pieces of Phoenix, right? And what I've understood is that part only wants to be loved unconditionally. And so, since I know that, I imagine that part of me in front of me, like another Phoenix. And I will say, oh my God, you're feeling jealous. Of course you do. In the circumstances, of course you feel jealous. And I will imagine holding that part of me really close and just letting it know that it's okay to feel jealous. I give it complete permission to feel jealous. Then I imagine that part, softening into myself, and I soften into it until we become one again. That's what I understood in that vision I had, that these parts of me will follow me around forever until I turn around and I reunite with them and make them one with me. And once I have allowed them to become one with me, which means I don't reject that anymore. I'm like, okay, I'm jealous. That's okay. I can fully accept and love that, those feelings are there. Then it starts to come to peace. There is a real feeling of peace and empathy. And through that process, which is a little longer than I explain it, I also understand why the jealousy is there. So then there's the empathy and the complete acceptance of, right, I get it, of course. And then there might be the part of me that doesn't want to feel jealous, because oftentimes there's like a few at the same time. And so I go through the same um, process with the part of me that doesn't want to feel jealous. And again, I get to that place where I develop empathy for, of course, you don't want to feel jealous. It feels awful. Who wants to, right? And so I embrace that feeling as well in the same way. And then I realize I can hold both. They're not in competition with each other. I can hold the part of me that is jealous just as much as the part that doesn't want to be jealous at the same time in unconditional love. And that creates magic.
That's so beautiful. And I think it's so valuable for everyone to self-love. And because the more we love ourselves, the better we are in any relationship.
Yeah.
And coming back a little bit to the main topic of narcissism, I'm really curious because you're also a mom as
Yes.
well, a mom of two boys, right? And how has the mother-daughter relationship with your narcissistic mom, how has it impacted your parenthood and your view on parenting and
Mhm.
your relationship with your sons as well?
Mhm. Right. Well, when I started my healing work somewhere in the process, I realized that I would want to treat my kids in a very different way, with unconditional love. Once I understood that I never had unconditional love and what it created, I I vowed to, if I could do nothing else but give my kids unconditional love, that would be amazing. And so as I, had my boys or my first child, I would often, in the beginning, I would envision them and as like, what if this was like little me? How would I want to have been treated if this had happened? And so that is actually what started teaching me how to treat him. So I would react to him in a way as I would have wished that my mom would have treated me at that moment. And very quickly that turned into this pattern that was actually very easy to have unconditional love and to never really, get mad in the same way, but to be understanding, to be patient, to look into their point of view first before I had my own, so I could, react accordingly with lots of love. Where there's still a correction, I wouldn't let them do everything, but it would be with the great deal amount of love. Of I totally get why you want this. Of course you want this, duh. And I'm sorry, but right now that's not possible.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
how's their relationship to their grandmother?
Well, I severed that relationship about
Mm.
7 years ago. In the beginning, my parents live in Germany and I lived at the time in Canada. And I would go in the beginning very often, every half a year I would go and bring my firstborn son. And then after My second one was born 6 years later. I went, once a year because I wanted my children to have a close relationship with their grandparents. But then I could see, in the beginning when they were babies, it was very easy. My mom would, just dote on them and give them everything they wanted. But the older they became and the more opinions they had of their own, and the less they would sometimes pay attention to grandma, she would start treating them the same way as she treated me. And I could see that in front of my eyes and go like, whoa, wait a moment, like that is so wrong. And for many years, I still continued to go and stop her from, showing those kind of behaviors. That's when I was still thinking she had borderline personality disorder and that there could be something done and there could be something to help her understand. At some point, though, when I found out that she was narcissistic, I realized that there was no way to teach her how to be different with them. And that the only way I could have allow a relationship between the two of them is if I protected my sons 24/7. And so that's what I thought is like, I'll just protect them. I'll distract her. I'll explain to them about what she's doing. It's like I'm going to withdraw them. I'm going to shut the door. I'm going to manage the whole thing. And
Oh my God, all that responsibility on your shoulders.
oh my God, and it was so bad. I could never ever leave them with her even for a minute because she would use that minute to do her thing. And so I had to be around them. If I had to go to the bathroom, they had to come with me. I could not leave the room without taking them with me to another room if I didn't know where my mom was. And I even set very clear boundaries at the end. I said, you cannot talk about this anymore in their presence. You cannot have this kind of behavior or we will not come anymore.
Did
And
did she respect those boundaries?
yes and no. I mean, as soon as she knew that I was very, very strict and clear that, we're leaving if you do this kind of behavior, or we're not coming back if you show this kind of behavior, there was a huge rebellion where her mask really fell and you could see who she really was. But in the end, she agreed because that was the only way I would bring back my children. And so, yes, she would adhere to the very precise things that I said she was not allowed to do, but they're so sneaky that they will find a way to do it anyhow, but you can't prove it because they didn't say those words, or it's so subtle that you don't quite know what they're doing. You know they're doing it, but you can't point it out because how the hell are you going to describe something that is so subtle and still so there, right? And so I realized that I could not protect my kids no matter how hard I tried. And that's when I realized that I did not want to expose them to any of this any longer. And I severed the relationship.
Wow. To me, you look like a mama bear protecting her young ones.
Yeah, that's where I became the mama bear. Mhm.
It's really amazing. So, and how about your other relationships in terms of, your relationship with your dad and other people? How has this affected?
Yeah, huge impact. Took me a very long time to see. Since you asked about my dad first, I was never allowed to develop a close, loving relationship with my dad, and he was never allowed to develop one with me. And I don't think we knew this consciously. It took me a long time to figure this out. But we had to be on her side, and she had to be the priority. And and any kind of close relationship I would have, or any close moment with my dad, would threaten her that something would always happen. As soon as she could see we were loving with each other or very kind, she'd, something would happen where all of a sudden we were all like, whoa, what just happened? How did we get into this argument? What is it even about? I don't quite know. Like she'd always make something happen. Or she would be so jealous and even showed openly that it was like, and then this would turn into days of drama. So we learned very, very early on that our feelings for each other had to be kept hidden. We were not allowed to express them, especially not in front of her. And because both my dad's and my focus was always on her when she was in the room, or even when she was not in the room. Is she okay? Should we go check in with her? What's going on? So our focus was always on my mom. So we couldn't even quite really see each other. It was always on her. Is she okay? Is she okay? Like a relationship isn't really possible when 90% of your focus is on trying to make sure that there's not another outburst happening, right? And so that's painful to see, that because my dad's amazing. He is outgoing, he's incredibly kind, everyone gets along with him, he's funny, and I never really had the chance to really take that in and to really enjoy it and bathe in it. So,
Mm.
there's a huge loss. And now it's not possible anymore because he decided to stay with her, which means that in order to protect himself, he has to be, at least officially, on her side, which
Mm.
means we can't have a relationship now that I've really distanced myself from my mom. It's very hard to have a relationship. We used to write to each other, but my mom would come into his room and check what he's writing and to whom all the time. So there's that fear of, oh my God, what if she finds out I have a relationship with my daughter? So it's very, very difficult to have a relationship even with him now that she's not quite in my life anymore, but it's still impacting his to a really large degree.
I assume your parents have been for all this time together.
Mhm.
So, how do you think your dad feels?
Mhm. Yeah, I've been asking myself that question a lot. He's been with her since he was 21, so he moved directly from his parents' house in with my mother and never had a prior relationship. She's the only relationship he has ever had. And so I don't think he's ever had the chance to compare the relationship he has with my mom with another relationship. So and when there's no comparison, it's really hard to see what's wrong, right? And he has learned to focus on her, which means sometimes he might not know what he wants and what he thinks. He's walking on eggshells. He's done that his whole life. He's always treading carefully. And he has learned, I think, in part to shut his feelings down because with a narcissist, you get hurt all the time. And so, in order to protect yourself in some ways, you have to shut down a layer of yourself of feeling. And so, I think that's what he used to tell me, in one ear and out the other. That's how he deals with mom. It's like, let it go in one ear, let it go out the other, let it roll off his shoulders. And of course, it's affecting him, in other ways as well. But I think he has found a way to dissociate from that so he doesn't feel it.
Mm. So, I heard you have taken distance from your mom now,
Yeah.
right? Do you have any relationship at all, or is that the solution for now?
It was for about 3 years. I had no contact. And then about 3 years ago, I think we started communicating through WhatsApp. And that is a way where I can still let her know about the life of her grandchildren because, I know that as a narcissist, she's also struggling tremendously. I now have great empathy for her, actually. And that is one of the joys that I can give her is to send pictures to let her know how they're doing. And so we will have short conversations, back and forth. And once in a while, she will say nasty things. And then it's very easy now for me to remind her and say, listen, that's not okay. And if you want me to continue to communicate with you in this way through texting, you'll have to stop. And then she
Mm.
does, because that's the only way to set a boundary with a narcissist, right? Is if you have something that they really, really want, and then you ask them to not cross that boundary, or you will take what they want away.
Mm.
Hmm.
So that works.
That works. with little
What
reminders here and there.
okay. So what else works for you to be able to be in this relationship?
Well, I had to go through a hell of a lot of healing to come to this place because, of course, at first I was terrified of her. I mean, she is a terrifying woman. And so I had to work through protecting myself so that I wouldn't have to be terrified anymore, right? I had to say, I cannot, I need the distance to really, really heal. I need to go no contact for who knows how long. Now, I also had to get to the point where, with a mother, with the clients that I work with, this is still such a big part for them, even though they know who their mother is. There is still that longing, there is still that hope for love from your mother. It is one of the most fundamental things that we're yearning for. And so before I could really say, okay, I'm going to go no contact because there is no hope for me, I had to let go of that longing to get that love from her. And so I went through a very deep process of letting go of that hope, of letting go of that expectation that she could somehow love me. And once I, had gotten to that point of really truly letting go completely, that is when I was able for the first time in my life see her for who she is and to see and know what she's capable of and know that that will never happen. And so what allows me to have this relationship with her now is why I'm explaining this is I have no expectations, right?
Mm.
I know who she is. I have no expectations at all, which is why I can be completely detached from what she's saying. It doesn't hurt me anymore what she says. It doesn't trigger me to respond in a certain way. I am completely free from automatic responses in relationship to my mother. Mhm.
And I'm curious as well because you're working with people
Mhm.
that have more or less the same kind of relationships. And what I assume that is super hard is because it's a family member. It's different, I assume, when it's a partner because you can shut things off. But when it's a family member, what advice do you give actually on how to deal with them?
Well, it really depends on where they're at, right? Are they still wanting to have a relationship with them? Yes or no? That would be a very different advice than if they realize that healing for them can't happen um, unless they go no contact. So my clients are in different times and spaces and different places with a family member. So if they want to have a relationship with the narcissist, we do a lot of work around um, what impacts them and how does it impact them and how can they lessen that impact, right? If it's of a negative impact, it usually is with a narcissist, how can they lessen that impact and how important is it for them to lessen that impact, right? For some people, they're still so closely connected, they still have a lot of expectations. They haven't quite come to that point yet where they have realized that those, you know, they know in their mind that it's very unlikely that gets fulfilled, but that innate desire is still there and has such a strong hold that they're not willing to move away that far. But for someone, I guess in general, if I try to answer your question in general, I would say that if you want to have a relationship with a family member that is a narcissist, reduce the time you hang out with them. Just make it short visits. If you can, stay away from meeting in person and just talk over the phone. Even better, just communicate through texting because we really need, this is what I've realized, to really realize how this is actually impacting us, the relationship with a narcissist, we have to be completely no contact for at least 3 months. That's when we realize how we are changing and how our brain is shifting into a completely different space that we could have never imagined. Somehow, the relationship, being in a close relationship with a narcissist, keeps us in a specific state of mind to where we cannot realize certain things, to where we cannot see certain things, and where we are just a different person, and where we still operate in a space to where we have a lot of very reactive relation, strong reactions to the narcissist. So I guess the other thing I would advise is, if you really want to see who you are without the narcissist, if you really want to see how this relationship is impacting you so that you can make a choice, go no contact for at least 3 months.
Mm.
Then you really will be in a place to make some powerful choices.
What do people usually discover when they are with this 3 months of no contact?
They realize that they have a very strong inner voice, that they actually have an inner voice that is very wise. They start to realize who they are, what they need, what they desire, independent from the narcissist. They realize that they are becoming a completely different human being. Even if they don't do any inner work, just being away for 3 months, wow, their brain shifts to a place that feels a lot more grounded, to where they're more level. The emotions aren't going up and down so wildly. And now they can also see other relationships with other people in their life that look a little similar to that relationship with a narcissist, where they start to realize, oh my God, I think you might be another narcissist I have attracted. Oh my God, there's something wrong in this relationship with this person, because the narcissist is so loud and so big. It's like a volcano erupting every single day. You're always trying to just survive this volcano eruption, that once you take the volcano away, you see all these tiny little volcanoes that exist in your world as well. Or you can find, it's like, oh wow, actually I'm not in as much fear, I'm not so worried about this, I can focus on work, I can now see things. Because it's like, when you're looking at an erupting volcano, all you see is the fire and the lava coming at you. You don't see the rest of your life at all, right? But
Mm.
when you have that gone, all of a sudden you notice the birds and the trees and this person, and then wow, there's so much you notice. It's like you have completely changed your life. Now there's a life where before there
Exactly.
wasn't. Before
Exactly.
you
And it sounds just so exhausting, the other one. And I'm
Yeah.
curious as well, like, how come a lot of us are actually attracted to narcissists? And I know that you said the charming part before, but it feels like it's a drug as well, a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really good question. The way I see it is that we are not so much attracted to narcissists, or maybe we are, but the narcissists are just as much attracted to us.
Mm.
Because for them, we light up like a neon sign in a dark room. They can go through a whole bunch of people and they'll see the people instantly that whatever they're doing is going to work on. And it works on us because we have grown up. When we've grown up, or when we've spent a long time with a narcissist, they were all these red flags, right? But we don't recognize them as red flags, because for us they are so normal. Someone demanding that we have no boundaries, that's normal. We don't even know that we are allowed to have boundaries. So, of course we won't set boundaries, because we feel mean when we set a boundary with someone else, and we want to be kind and empathetic and understanding. So I think that people who grow up with a narcissist are being trained to be super empaths by the narcissist, and to be super sensors. And so that's what we do. We go to where the other person is and what the other person needs. And so it's very easy for a narcissist to pick us out, to come to us, and to give us, here's the thing, what we are really attracted to with a narcissist is the beginning, what is called love bombing, because the narcissist will mirror everything back to us. All the insecurities, when we think, oh, I'm too skinny or I'm too fat, they're like, you're beautiful. They know exactly what we need to hear. And we're like, oh my God, finally someone loves me for who I am. And we have so much in common because they put on the mask. Right now, they are becoming the chameleon that mirrors exactly who we want to be with. And it is like, we feel unconditional love for the first time in our lives. It is irresistible because we have longed for this for so much. And we hold on to that because it feels so good. It feels that hole that we carry deep within that has never been filled, that we sometimes we even pick up on something that is not quite right. But this cake tastes so good. Never mind what I just see. That can't be it because the rest feels so good.
So when starting a relationship with a narcissist, right, and you start, because the beginning, as you said, it's a lot of love bombing, and then it smooths in very, very, like, masterfully, that you don't realize actually that, okay, they're starting to devalue you and they're starting to put you down and everything. The question is, do people actually realize these red flags? Like, usually, when do they realize? Because
Oh,
from experience, it's also realizing way too late.
yeah. Yes, usually it is way too late because we tend to blame ourselves. I mean, the narcissist, that's how it starts, right? Here's this amazing relationship and everything is so juicy and couldn't be any more wonderful. And now there comes a criticism of like, hey, that's not cool when you do that, right? The narcissist gives the criticism. And there is that break in the wonderfulness. And so we going like, oh my God, what did I do that wrong? What did I do wrong? And if we've been with a narcissist before, definitely always ask ourselves, what did I do wrong? Right? That's, we've been trained to see the fault in ourselves. And even when we're an empathetic person, or even if we're a normal person, when someone gives us a criticism, usually we reflect it back to ourselves and go like, oh, what did I do wrong here? Right? And so that's it. I've done something wrong. I don't quite understand it, but oh my God, all the wonderfulness is gone. I want that back. I have to fix this. What if I lose this person? Right? Like, this has been better than anything. This is my soulmate. Like, I have to make this relationship work. That's the thought, right? Have to make it work. And so we try hard. Now we're apologizing for something we're not quite sure even if it was wrong, but maybe it was, and probably it was. And of course, we're able to be flexible and we can adjust. Right? So that gives the sign to the narcissist, great, I can manipulate her, easy peasy. So the narcissist starts to put those things in more and more. And he tells us, you've changed. You're not the same as you were in the beginning. And we're like, oh, did I? What am I doing wrong? Have I really changed? How can I go back to how I was? Because I want to keep this relationship. And I don't want to be mean. I don't want to be neglectful. And maybe it is my fault. And so it's so slow, ever so slowly, there will be more and more criticism interspersed with everything's fine again because, yes, you're doing the right thing. And guess what? Very soon we are becoming very, very weary of, I can't do anything wrong anymore because that time that's horrible is just so horrible and I want to keep it good. So I have to be good. I have to do the right thing. And again, that's maybe something we've learned in the childhood. Right now, it's like we have to please to get that beautiful reaction and that beautiful life that we want. And more, now we're starting to walk on eggshells without really noticing. We're like, how's he feeling? Is he okay? Was that okay what I said? Did I say the wrong thing again? How can I word it differently? We just slide into it ever so slowly. And it can take years and decades before, who knows what wakes us up to the fact that this is a narcissist, right? It's that slow progression to where, when you throw a frog in boiling water, he will jump out. But if you put the frog in cold water and heat it up slowly, the frog will get cooked in the water because he doesn't notice those tiny little temperature changes. And the alarm bells don't ring. It's like, there's something wrong, because it's so gradual. We get used to it.
And from experience, it's also the hope keeping you there in a way, like, yeah, just for me, this person will change, right?
Mhm.
And because they promise change, and then because as soon as they feel that you're leaving, it's like, do something to attract you back in that,
Yes. Right.
right?
So that's the next step, right? If we realize something is wrong and we should point out to them that they've done something wrong and we're actually leaving. That's right. That's when the love bombing comes again. And it's very irresistible. It's like, oh, they want to change. They've promised it, they're doing the work, and it's just been so great. It's like the olden days, but only for so long. Yeah.
Exactly. What would you advise people at this stage in their life,
Mm.
especially when they're in a relationship with a narcissist?
Mm. Do you mean when they have realized that they are with a narcissist? Get the
Exactly.
hell out. Get the hell out. It will never get better. It will only get worse.
Mm.
Yeah, there's no other way. They will not change because they cannot change. And do you really want to live with a partner who sees you as an appliance, who is never ever going to be able to love you because they're unable to love people, right? You can't love a toaster. You can think a toaster is great, you can love a toaster in a certain way, but only because it serves you, not because you want to serve the toaster. We don't want to serve an appliance. We have them because they're useful. And so, you know, I think we need to really realize that what we have been seeing is just a show. It's not real. The love we've been getting that felt so wonderful is not love at all. It's just a movie, we're watching that we want to believe, but is not true.
Mm. In conclusion, what are some of the life lessons that you have learned throughout all these experiences with narcissists?
Right. I have learned that a relationship with a narcissist is only possible on a very superficial level. There is no real connection because they can't really connect. I've learned that we can heal from deep trauma completely, that it's worth the work and the effort. I've learned that the healing journey, before we started seems very scary because we feel like, oh my God, I've got to go into all these really terribly painful places. But I've learned that at the end of those places is always a treasure that is so huge. It completely outweighs the struggle and the pain that we went through. I've also learned that the healing journey becomes more and more interesting and fascinating, and that once we've really realized what it can do, we'll never stop.
Thank you so much. This has been so inspiring, so full of wisdom and learning.
Mm.
And I
Thank you.
really, really appreciate you sharing your story, which was very sensitive and very vulnerable. And thank you for having that courage. Also, to do the work for yourself and everyone else.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you inviting me, and I'm so glad we could have this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us in the Life Lessons Lounge. Remember, every story has its wisdom. Join us next time for more insights and inspiration. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep sharing your own story.